Welcome to day 6, the last day of our stitch along. Today we're going to stitch Mary. So if you remember, from our very first day, this is what Mary looks like in the pattern. She's got all these circles, and we talked about that you don't need to have the circle traced, just the 5 lines that make up the woven wheel. So we are working with it's all the way over here. There we go. The woven wheels are 12 strands of 3/866. And this is mostly true. The first part, these foundation stitches of the woven wheel, we're just going to use 6 strands of floss because we don't need this to be double thick. We're going to use the double thick to create all the beautiful texture and height that we have here. So step 1 to make woven wheels is to stitch the 5 spokes of the wheel. And you do this by coming up on the outside of any one of the spokes, and then you go down in the center. And then you just continue around the whole circle, going up on the outside, down on the inside, until you have all 5 stitched. Again, we're making sure that we want to get our thread all the way out to the edge of that line that we traced. Just like when I told you to make sure the line goes all the way to the edge of the circle. This is so that as we fill these woven wheels in, as many of these circles as possible will intersect and touch, making Mary's dress look nice and full, which is what we're going for. Now, I cut 1 extra long piece of floss to make these foundation stitches with, probably an extra 6-8 inches over my usual yard or so. This was just because I wanted to make sure that I could get all of these done with 1 continuous strand of floss, all of these base stitches done. Because when you anchor, we want to make sure that the anchor for the foundation stitches, for the spokes, is, oh, I got a knot. I made it so far without a knot. Hold, please. Crisis averted, not fixed. But I did lose my train of thought. Oh, we're talking about anchoring. When you anchor these foundation stitches, you want to make sure that it's a good solid anchor, because they are the only part of the woven wheel that is anchored to the fabric. Everything else is just stitched in between these spokes. There's nothing about the fill stitches, if you will, that hold them to the fabric. So that is why I try and make sure all of my anchors for a woven wheel are solid. All right, foundation stitch is done. Actually, I might redo that last one. Looks like I'm a little short as compared to his neighbors. I'm gonna redo this, anchor off, and then we'll talk about 12 strands on your needle. All right, to make 12 strands of floss on our needle, we're just going to take our normal 6 strands, that full 6 strands, thread it through the needle, like we normally would, and then I'm going to take both ends of my floss here, hold them together, and then I'm going to pull my needle until my needle is in the center of my floss. See, I'm pulling it along here. Got a little stuck though. There we go. I also have a very long section of floss. Since I've just doubled it over, it's about 2 yards of floss here. That's 6 feet. So you want 5-6 feet of floss to work with because it goes quick, which is why you have 2 skeins of floss if you got the kit. Now we're just going to start with a good old-fashioned knot. And I think I'm going to jump in the middle here. Now I finished these two because as I went to anchor off, I realized I had enough floss left on my needle that it was silly to waste it, so I stitched those. So we're gonna do, to make the woven wheel, we've got 12 strands of floss on. We're gonna come up in between 2 spokes. Doesn't matter which ones. And we're gonna pull our thread all the way up. Now, working in a circle, clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't matter. We're going to go over and then under each spoke. So I went over and then under. Now I'm going over and then, oh, I have to be ambidextrous here and be able to stitch with both hands when I'm on camera. Under, over, under. And we just keep going over and under till we get to the edge of the spoke and there's no more over under to be had. And you'll see as I pull these into the center, they're going to start to overlap a little bit, and that's okay. You don't want them to pull all the way into the center. That's not okay. But there's a little bit of overlap. We want that because then you can't see this spoke stitch anymore. So we just keep going around and around. And just like with, I have to think about what stitch we were doing. Whipped back stitch, just like whipped back stitch. If you struggle getting your needle under without catching it by using the point of the needle, feel free to go through under with the eye of your needle instead. The same thing will work. I also like to put my finger behind. You can see I'm pushing up. It tends to make it gap a little bit more, and I can push down against my finger on the back to slide my needle through. Now we'll use a little recorded magic, and I will see you at the end of this woven wheel. Okay, we're here at the end. I've finished all the way to the edge, and you can see that this one is actually pretty even. I can see the edge of this spoke just a little bit, but I can't see any of the others. So what I might do to finish is take one just big stitch around the outside to make sure I can't see any of those spokes and make sure this guy is just nice and thick and chunky. Take this stitch right here, and then I will move on to the next one. I think I'm gonna go up here to this nice little one, and we're gonna repeat the process. I come up in between 2 of them and over, under, and then over and under. And just keep going. Now as you get more woven wheels in here, it's gonna get harder not to shove your needle into the other ones. So take your time, rotate your hoop if you need to, so that you don't catch anything else with your needle. On these little teeniest woven wheels, you want to make sure that we are, I try really hard on these ones not, to pull my thread too tight. If you pull your thread too tight, it starts to look all gummed up rather than nice and smooth. So keep going around this little guy, and then I'll just keep stitching all of these woven wheels until they're all filled in, and then we will talk about how we are going to fill in the rest of the space. All right, on this little guy, I made it to the edge of the spokes. I can't fit much more floss in here, but I'm not touching the line quite yet, and I have a couple ends that I can see. So I've made one stitch here, and now for my next stitch around the outside, because I want to cover this up and make it touch more, I'm going to come out underneath this stitch over here, and then go down on the side, close to it, and I'll help guide it in here where I want it to be. And then I'm going to repeat the process. I'll come under, kind of on the edge to the middle area. Got another knot. All right, fix the knot. So pull that up, and then again, over here on the side, we'll go down close to our circle, and then I think it needs at least one more. Come up here on the edge, and we'll go big and guide it into place. And now I'm touching my neighbors and touching the side, and feel good about moving on to the next one. One of the stitches I made a minute ago caught some of the satin stitch. I've got one strand that is too long now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut it out. I'm gonna go down here as close to the fabric as I can get it, cut this side, and then same thing on this side. That one teeny tiny little strand is not going to be missed in my satin stitch, and now it looks perfect again. So if you ever catch just one strand, cut it out. Say goodbye. All right, I've finished all of the woven wheels, and now we need to fill in these gaps. You can see I did some over here. I had some floss left on my needle, and I knew it was not enough to finish this guy, so I filled in some space. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna do French knots, just like we did up here in the top of Mary's headband. We just have a lot more thread on our needle, so it's gonna make big, fun knots. Now, when I make these, I'm using anywhere from 1 to 3 wraps, but when I'm trying to fill in a big space like this, I wrap around, and then I'm not gonna pull this floss too tight. You can see it's kind of chunky and loose here, so that when I pull it down, it's gonna make a bigger, looser knot to fill in more space. And then we just keep going. And then anywhere where my woven wheels don't touch all the way together, like right up here, I'll probably add another stitch or two first to the outside of one of those flowers, probably this big one. So then when I go to fill in the little triangle spaces, the big circles are already touching. So at this point, it's just kind of a fun game of filling in all the little nooks and crannies with as many French knots as you can shove in there. And the looser you make them, the more they'll match kind of these rose shapes we've got. If you get too tight, they'll start to just look like little knots, which can be cute, but a little bit different than the rest. At this point, you have learned how to do everything and can finish your hoop. Don't forget to post a picture. I want to see your finished hoop, and I'm so excited. You guys did lots of awesome hard work to finish, and thanks for stitching with me. Happy day 6.